Hi everyone, I'm Kristen Phillips, UNSW Founders New Wave Program Manager, and today I'm chatting to two daring and disruptive program alumni and the Cohort 7 Judges Award winners, CCQ and Lucy McIntosh, founders of Truli.
I'm Cece and I'm in my final year of a Commerce and Information Systems degree. So I think throughout uni, I've done a bunch of things like tech. I've worked in kind of consulting and a bit of finance. So kind of tried a bunch of different industries, but I've often felt that kind of what was missing from my life was the creative side that I could really kind of combine with all the stuff that I've learned at uni and outside. So for me, like doing Truli with Lucy and also with my boyfriend Calvin was kind of the perfect opportunity to do that.
Yeah, so I'm Lucy. I'm in my 5th year of an arts law degree at UNSW. And I think similar to Cece, I had that kind of lack of creativity in my life professionally. So the startup world lent itself quite nicely to that. And yeah, we met through the New Wave program, as you said, a great pairing from you there, Kristen, and we haven't looked back since. Yeah.
In terms of our one sentence summary, it's to inspire young women from age 18 to 30 to feel more confident in their sexual wellbeing journey. And how we plan on doing that is kind of through 3 main channels. The first one is giving young women better access and kind of less barriers to be able to purchase sexual sex toys, basically. The second one is around education, so kind of all around sexual well-being and sexual health and everything like that. And that's kind of what we plan to provide through blogs and Instagram. And then the third part is around building a community where people can kind of come and share about their experiences, as well as kind of create this sense of beyond just reviews for products, which we've seen a lot of e-commerce players do, kind of create a place where women can share not only reviews, but like inspiration, ideas, and thoughts to help each other. So that's kind of what we want to provide for young women as kind of a summary.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that very briefly. When we did conduct our market research, we found that word of mouth was so crucial in terms of, fostering a woman's confidence in their sexual well-being. And unfortunately, there are a lot of women out there it could be due to their background, religion, sexuality, a whole host of things that don't have the privilege to have that word of mouth, so accessible to them in their relationships with friends or boyfriends, partners, girlfriends. So we really want Truli to, I guess, become like a replacement for that for people who don't have that in their lives. Okay. I think for me, I'd be lying if I said that it wasn't my own personal experience in the space. And obviously I don't want to go too deep into that because I don't think anyone will really want to hear about it. But yeah, I've faced, I think, a few barriers when it comes to I guess mustering up the confidence at times and asserting what I want. And I think another thing that really made me passionate, and it's only probably within the last year or so, but I've had the privilege to have some very open, candid, and honest conversations with my friends about things that revolve around their own sexual well-being. And it is from those conversations that I've realized that I guess I wasn't the only one struggling with certain things. And there is a real a lack of education and I guess information out there to make women feel more comfortable in that department, I guess, and just to make them feel as though they're not alone. Because the reality is, I think as a woman, with your own sexual well-being, there are barriers that you're facing just by virtue of your gender. Yeah.
So maybe I'll give like a little overview of, I guess, growing up. So I came to Australia when I was 8 with my family, and because of that, I think a lot of like the cultural, I would say like a lot of the cultural norms that were present in Chinese culture very much, I think, carried over when I grew up. So, for example, at home, I speak to my parents in Chinese, and it's very much like a conservative kind of culture that I come from, where, I don't think I've had, maybe I've had like one sex positive conversation with my parents, and it's not something that we talked about. And kind of building on that, I also went to an academically selective high school. So a lot of the students there also came from a similar background to me. And that meant that none of us really had those conversations growing up. So I think when I first started uni, it was very kind of startling to suddenly kind of see people around me that were from very different backgrounds and be very sex positive. I think it was almost like jarring for me to see that, and almost feel like an expectation for me to suddenly like change or like mature or like change into basically someone who embraces their sexuality, compared to before, which is almost like, repressing your sexuality. So kind of that made me realize, hey, there's not really a lot of support for people who are feeling that way. And it's almost like, oh, you just figure it out yourself. And that also kind of made us realize another layer problem, which is there aren't that many kind of sex positive role models. I think in social media, we see a lot of people who are very, I wouldn't even say like super sex positive, but just like very sexually vocal. So, and those, for people who are coming from a background that don't talk about sex, is quite a jump to me. When I met my boyfriend, initially when we went out to kind of go and purchase and explore sex toys, we also found the process to be quite confronting and overwhelming. So with traditional sex stores, normally they're not the most welcoming of places to want to step in. And even when you do step in, it's kind of, it's a whole world. And unless you're someone who's already like very open-minded or very confident in themselves, it can be very, very confronting to make that step. So kind of combining all of those like factors together, that's what really, I think, personally motivated me to come up with an idea like Truli, because I think that both on kind of like a cultural stigma standpoint, as well as from like even just like a logistical barriers in terms of stores and stigma, I feel like it is definitely time for some like innovative startup like us, dare I say, to come in and really like provide that kind of support for women who want to explore, even though they might not be that confident or that well versed, especially in the beginning. So very interesting enough, at the very beginning, we conducted a survey where we interviewed around, I think, like 96 respondents, and the results were very surprising to Lucy and I. The first thing was, and I think this is something that's really great about kind of doing hypothesis testing early on, Lucy and I had a whole idea that kind of sexual pleasure, and especially female sexual pleasure, is quite holistic. And what we mean by that, it's like something beyond just like orgasms. Maybe some people have like a ritual or like a mindset that they like to be in to enhance sexual pleasure. So we kind of went at it trying to explore what else can we provide for women to help them kind of prioritize this aspect of their life. So when we asked around, it turns out that not a lot of people, I think it was like 25%, expressed that they had actually no routines and no other practices either before, during, or after masturbation. And I think that was quite surprising for us, as, oh, maybe this is something that our customers aren't perhaps looking for us to get assistance on. And in terms of the barriers that they face, I think this is something that was quite sobering for us to realize. But one of the questions we asked was, I think it was, what kind of negative experiences have you had around sex, whether that be kind of education, your family, or potential partners that you've had in the past. And we found that around 25% of our survey respondents have experienced some sort of sexual abuse or harassment. And yeah, I think that was quite surprising for all of us, just to see the prevalence of it. And I think it made us realize that what we're doing here is so much more than just kind of providing like better quality or innovative sex toys, but it actually, in terms of the mission, we're hoping to really help women who have kind of faced those barriers and traumas in the past to find a way to kind of empower them as well to be included in this movement. Because I think with kind of the competitors we've seen in the space, it's often catered towards like one specific demographic, which is women who are already quite confident in their sexuality and people who are perhaps already having those conversations with friends. And what we haven't seen in the market is kind of what I think of as like a bridging the gap between people who perhaps haven't really explored that side of themselves or have had barriers such as, you know, previous trauma that has prevented them from kind of, like exploring themselves. So
Right.
yeah, I think that's one of the things that was very, very surprising to us about the survey.
And I just think on a more general level, our mission is kind of focused on prioritizing sexual well-being, just as we see physical well-being and mental well-being very normalized. And I think that's what's lacking. There's a lack of normalization, and you know, the industry itself is still very much stigmatized. And if we can, you know, work to break down those barriers and make women feel more confident generally, not just in terms of their sexual well-being, then I think that's great. Yeah. It's an incredibly competitive space. I think since the pandemic, a lot of women have been spending a lot of time indoors, obviously exploring a lot of things. And I think something that sets us apart is that we, like at Truli, actually made the conscious decision to align ourselves with the term sexual well-being as opposed to sexual wellness. And I don't know whether our audience are that well-versed in what constitutes sexual wellness, but we're as much at a loss as they are, to be honest. There's a lot of jargon being thrown around: pleasure products, bedroom essentials, intimate objects, and it's kind of hard to identify what their offering actually is. But I think for us, we see sexual well-being as being comprised of 3 different elements. So we're working on making women feel confident in their sexual health, their sexual pleasure, and their sense of sexual justice as well. So sexual justice, the way in which I think we've conceived of it, is that it's about empowering women to, I guess, be assertive about things that matter to them in the space of sexual well-being. It's about contributing to closing, very well-known gaps like the orgasm gap. Cece, did you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, sure. So funnily enough, this is one of the things that I think I watched that sparked inspiration for this idea. I think it was like a Netflix documentary called Explained. And one of the episodes was around the female orgasm gap, which is, I might be misquoting stats here, but it's basically with hetero females, in terms of partnered sex with a male counterpart, the orgasm percentage is something around, I think it was like 11 or maybe a little bit higher, but something in that ballpark. Whereas if you compare that with people who are in same-sex relationships, that orgasm, I think, rate is around 80%, which just shows that it's not just a matter of kind of biology being in the way, but it's also a matter of like understanding and knowledge. So I think hearing that stat was super like eye-opening to me and kind of sparked the idea that this is a space that has so much kind of potential. And I think, yeah, that's a big part of the reason why Lucy and I are so passionate about it. Yeah, in terms of like the changes we've made, there's been, I think, the most significant one, which is pivoting away from the subscription box idea into more kind of providing a service for people that's much more kind of focused on taking away barriers as opposed to like providing a new experience. And I think the key reason for that, as I mentioned a little bit before, was the fact that with the subscription box, it's very much around kind of creating the whole experience where people either don't do that currently or aren't necessarily looking for that as kind of their priority. So what we're much more focused on now is taking pleasure products, sex toys, and making it a lot more accessible for people to try, both in terms of like in a stigma-free environment, in terms of having discreet packaging and that kind of those areas, as well as the second part, which is financially accessible. So a lot of the things that we've discovered is for people that haven't tried sex toys yet, it's kind of hard to make the case financially to invest in a toy when you don't really know what it feels like. And also you don't know which one is kind of the right one for you. So a lot of people kind of afford to go through that kind of trial and error process. And like, fair enough, it's so hard to be able to kind of just tell from an image on the website if it's going to be the one for you. So we're very focused on kind of addressing that barrier to make it possible for people to kind of find their right fit. And in terms of, I guess, that change and I guess leading to New Wave, I would actually much say it's not so much the feature that I think made us a lot more successful this time, but more so much the fact that I think we've really taken the time to understand the customers. Like, a big part of what we did during New Wave was actually just getting those 96 respondents for the survey and interviews. And I think that made us a lot more confident in the vision that we have now.
So lockdown, I think, surprisingly has been quite good for us as a team, because we've been spending a lot of time, albeit on Zoom, because Cece and her boyfriend are down at the snow, fortunately enough for them. We are at the stage of pre-launch at the moment, and if we're being very honest with ourselves, we're probably a few months off because we do want to source the most high quality products on offer, I guess. But between now and when we actually launch the products, our main focus will be building up our content, both predominantly through Instagram and through our blog, through our website. So definitely keep your eye out for that, because that'll give you a really good indication of what is to come from us once we launch.
In terms of our next steps and what we're looking for, if anyone in the audience has any experience when it comes to kind of supply chain sourcing, especially from overseas, or on the second note, material sciences, so we're really looking towards kind of getting the best materials in terms of our sex toys. So if anyone has like a background in either of those two things, please do get in touch. We are in desperate need of some guidance. We're just trying to figure it out ourselves.
And for anyone who's interested in supporting us on this journey, if you hop onto our website, truli.com.au, and click the sign up button, you'll receive a 30% off our first product launch.